had lived for 300 years. In that time, he had watched 17 wars between spacefaring species. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had documented the death of 2 civilizations and the birth of 5 others. Nothing surprised him anymore, or so he believed. The collective had sent him to observe humanity's first major war. It was supposed to be simple. The Dominion had destroyed a human colony world called Nu. They had killed 2.3 million people in a single day. Every species that had ever attacked had surrendered within months. Humanity had only been traveling through space for 200 years. They were children compared to the ancient powers of the galaxy. Expected to document another quick defeat. He expected to watch humanity break, negotiate, and submit. He expected to go home within a year. He was wrong about everything. The shuttle carried toward the human flagship. It was called the UNSS Eternal Dawn. Through the window, he could see the massive ship floating in the darkness of space. It was not beautiful like vessels. It was not elegant like warships. It was blocky and gray and covered with weapons. It looked like something built by people who expected to fight and did not care about appearances. Found this interesting. Most young species tried to make their ships look impressive. Humans had built something purely functional, something designed only for war. The shuttle docked and walked through the airlock into the human ship. The air was thicker than he preferred. The gravity was heavier. Humans had evolved on a harsh world, and they carried that harshness with them wherever they went. A young officer met him at the dock. She had black hair tied back tight and dark eyes that studied him without fear. Most species found intimidating. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. This human woman looked at like he was just another visitor. She said, "I am Lieutenant. I will take you to Admiral Park." She did not smile. She did not make small conversation. She simply turned and walked, expecting him to follow, appreciated this efficiency. He had dealt with too many species that wasted time on pointless pleasantries. They walked through corridors filled with humans, observed them carefully. He had expected grief. He had expected chaos. They had just killed millions of their people. Surely they would be falling apart. But the humans were not falling apart. They were working. They moved with purpose through the ship. They checked systems and carried equipment and spoke in low, focused voices. Some of them had red eyes from crying. Some of them had faces tight with anger, but they kept working. Had seen species respond to tragedy before. Some collapsed into despair. Some exploded into mindless rage. Humans did neither. They seemed to be holding something inside themselves, something compressed and waiting. Lieutenant led him to a large door. She pressed her hand against a panel, and the door slid open. "Admiral Park is expecting you," she said. Entered the room. It was a command center filled with screens and controls. In the middle stood an older human male. He had gray hair mixed with black and a face lined with age. His eyes were calm, too calm for a man whose people had just suffered such a loss. The man said, his voice was quiet and steady, "I am Admiral Park. Welcome aboard the Eternal Dawn." Inclined his head in the gesture of respect. "Admiral Park, the Galactic Council has sent me to observe and document this conflict. I thank you for allowing me aboard your vessel." The Admiral nodded. "You want to see how we fight?" "I want to understand how you respond," said carefully. "They have never lost a war. They have destroyed one of your worlds. The Council wishes to know what humanity will do next." Admiral Park was silent for a moment. He turned and looked at a screen showing a star map. A small dot marked where Nu had been, past tense. The planet still existed, but everything on it was dead. "What do we do next?" the Admiral repeated. He seemed to be considering the question seriously. "We remember, then we move." Waited for more, but the Admiral said nothing else. "May I ask what that means?" said. The Admiral turned back to face him. His eyes were not angry, they were not sad, they were something else. something could not identify. "It means we do not forget," Admiral Park said. "It means we carry our dead with us. It means we move forward because standing still is not an option. It means they made a mistake, and they do not yet understand what that mistake will cost them." There was no threat in his voice, no emotion at all. He stated it as simple fact, like he was describing the weather or the distance between stars. Felt something cold move through him. He had heard threats before. He had heard promises of vengeance from dying empires. Those had been full of fire and fury. This was different. This was ice. This was certainty. "They are very powerful," said. "They have conquered 37 species. Their fleet is 5 times the size of yours." "Yes," Admiral Park agreed. "You believe you can defeat them?" The Admiral considered this. "I believe we will not stop until this is over, whether that means our defeat or theirs. To think they know what they started, they are wrong." He said it simply, no boasting, no drama, just a statement of what he believed to be true. Spent the next several days observing the ship. He watched the crew work and talked to many humans. He tried to understand what he was seeing. The humans did not act like a species preparing to lose, but they also did not act like a species that believed victory was certain. They acted like people who had accepted that terrible things were coming and had decided to face those things anyway. He spoke with engineers who worked double shifts to keep the weapons ready. He spoke with soldiers who trained for combat every day. He spoke with medics who prepared for casualties they knew were coming. Everyone he talked to knew someone who had died on New, a friend, a family member, a lover. They all carried that loss, but they did not let it stop them. On his 5th night aboard the ship, sat in his quarters and recorded his first report to the Galactic Council. "I have begun my observation of human military response to the attack on New," he said into his recording device. "Initial assessment: I do not yet understand these beings. They have suffered a mortal blow. They have lost millions of their people. By all logic, they should be breaking apart. They should be seeking peace. They should be accepting that they are stronger." He paused, thinking about Admiral Park's calm eyes, thinking about Lieutenant's focused silence, thinking about all the humans working in the corridors, carrying their grief like a weight they refused to put down. "They are doing none of these things," continued. "They act as though the war has not yet truly begun. They act as though the destruction of New was not an ending but a beginning. I do not know what this means. I do not know what they are planning, but I am beginning to suspect that they may have made an error. The humans have a saying, 'Do not wake a sleeping dragon.' I am not certain, but I believe they may have done exactly that. I will continue observation and report further findings." He ended the recording and sat in the darkness of his quarters. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, they were celebrating their victory over the weak young species called humanity. Wondered how long that celebration would last. 3 weeks passed aboard the Eternal Dawn. Requested access to human historical records, and Admiral Park granted it without hesitation. The humans seemed almost eager for him to understand them, as if they wanted the galaxy to know what they were and why. Spent long hours in the ship's archive room, reading through thousands of years of human history. What he found there changed everything he thought he knew about this species. Earth was a violent world. Humans had been killing each other since before they could write. They had fought wars over land, over resources, over ideas, over gods. They had invented weapons that could destroy entire cities. They had committed acts of cruelty that made even the look gentle by comparison. But they had also survived. Again and again, they had faced extinction and pulled themselves back from the edge. They had rebuilt after every disaster. They had learned from every war. They had developed something that had never seen in any other species, a way to carry unbearable pain without breaking. Humans called it many things: resilience, determination, stubbornness, but began to understand that it was something deeper. It was a refusal to let the past die, a refusal to forget, a transformation of grief into something that could be used. Lieutenant found him in the archive room one evening. She had brought him food, a gesture of hospitality that he had learned was important to humans. "You have been reading for many hours," she said. "Have you found what you are looking for?" Looked up from the screen. "I am trying to understand your species. Your history is remarkable." Remarkable, she sat down across from him. "That is a polite word for it." "You have suffered greatly," said. "Your ancestors experienced terrible things, wars, plagues, famines, yet you continued, you grew stronger. Most species that endure such trauma become broken. Humans became more dangerous." Nodded slowly. "We learned to use it." "Use what?" "The pain." She looked at the screen, which was showing images from an ancient human war, burned cities, suffering people. "We learned that if we let the pain destroy us, we die, so we had to find another way. We had to turn it into something else." Thought about this. Turn it into what? Purpose, strength, memory. She met his 4 eyes with her too. "My younger brother died on Nu. He was 23 years old. He was studying to be a doctor. He wanted to help people." "I am sorry for your loss," said. "Thank you." Her voice did not shake. Her eyes did not water, but something behind them burned with a cold fire. "Is why I am here, not despite losing him, because I lost him. Every time I feel tired or afraid, I remember him. I remember that he cannot do anything anymore, so I have to do it for both of us." Did not know how to respond. This was not how most species processed grief. Most species tried to forget their pain, to move past it, to bury it. Humans seemed to do the opposite. They held onto their pain, they sharpened it, they made it into a weapon. 2 days later, the ship held a memorial service for the dead of Nu. Was invited to attend. The service was held in the largest cargo bay of the ship. Thousands of crew members gathered there, standing in silent rows. There were no decorations, no music, no priests or religious leaders, just people standing together in the vast empty space. Admiral Park stood at the front. He did not give a speech about vengeance. He did not promise to make the pay. He simply stood there for a long moment, looking at the faces of his crew. Then he spoke 6 words. "We carry them, they march with us." The walls of the cargo bay lit up. Names began to scroll across every surface. Millions of names, the names of every person who had died on Nu. Watched as humans around him began to cry, but they did not look away from the names. They stood straight and read them. Some of them whispered the names of people they had known. Some of them reached out and touched the walls as familiar names passed by. A young man near was shaking with silent sobs, but when looked at his face, he saw something beyond grief. He saw determination. He saw purpose. The young man was not crying because he was broken. He was crying because he was remembering, and the memory was making him stronger. The names continued to scroll. A display at the bottom of the room showed a counter. It would take 11 days to display all 2.3 million names. 11 days of continuous remembering. Understood now. Humans did not bury their dead. They did not try to forget them. They carried them. Every name was a weight, and humans had learned to carry that weight and keep walking, keep fighting, keep moving forward. After the service walked through the ship, the mood had changed. Before, the humans had been focused and efficient. Now they were something more. There was a fire in their eyes, a unity that he had never seen in any species. He stopped by a window and looked out at the stars. Lieutenant found him there. "You look troubled," she said. "I am processing," admitted. "The do not handle grief this way. When we lose people, we try to release the pain, to let it go so we can function. You do the opposite. You hold on to it. You use it." Nodded. "There is an old saying on Earth. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. It is not always true. Sometimes pain just hurts. But when we choose to use it, when we refuse to let our suffering be meaningless, we become something more than we were." "It seems like a terrible way to live," said quietly. "It is," agreed. "But it works. To think they hurt us by destroying new, they did hurt us, but they also gave us something. They gave us a reason. They gave us 2.3 million reasons." She turned and walked away, leaving alone with his thoughts. That night recorded his second report to the Galactic Council. "I have made an error in my initial assessment," he began. "I reported that humanity appeared to be functioning despite their loss. I believed this was a temporary state, that they would eventually break under the weight of their grief. I was wrong." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Humanity is not fragile, they are compressed. Their grief does not weaken them, it fuels them. They have developed a psychological mechanism that transforms pain into power. Every human on this ship is carrying the memory of the dead, and that memory is not dragging them down, it is pushing them forward." He thought about the names scrolling on the walls, about the young man crying with determination in his eyes, about Lieutenant, who fought because of her brother, not despite losing him. The believe they have broken humanity's spirit by destroying new. They have done the opposite. They have united a species that was scattered across many worlds. They have given humanity a shared wound that binds them together. They have created 2.3 million martyrs whose names will never be forgotten. Looked out his window at the stars. "I am beginning to understand why the galaxy's intelligence agencies flagged humanity as a potential threat. I am beginning to understand why the older species watch them with such concern. Humanity is not dangerous because they are strong or smart or numerous. They are dangerous because they have learned to turn their worst experiences into their greatest strengths." He ended the recording and sat in silence for a long time. The memorial names were still scrolling on screens throughout the ship. They would scroll for 11 more days, and when they finished, they would start again. The humans would never stop remembering. Wondered if they had any idea what they had awakened. The human counteroffensive began 2 months after the destruction of New, had expected them to attack military targets. He had expected a conventional war of ships and weapons and territory. He was wrong again. Humans did not fight like any species had ever observed. The first attack came against a communications relay. Human ships appeared from nowhere, destroyed the relay, and vanished before forces could respond. The second attack hit a supply depot. The third destroyed a fuel station. None of these were important military targets. They had hundreds of relays and depots and stations. But began to notice something. The attacks were not random. They were systematic. Humans were mapping territory, learning their patterns, testing their responses. They were preparing for something larger. Captain commanded the stealth destroyer squadron responsible for these raids. She was a small woman with short hair and quick eyes that never stopped moving. Requested permission to speak with her, and she agreed to meet him in the ship's tactical center. "You are confused by our strategy," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," admitted. "They have superior numbers, superior firepower. Standard military doctrine would suggest you should attack their weaknesses directly. Instead, you are striking targets of little value." Smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Standard military doctrine is wrong." She pulled up a display showing space. Red dots marked their attacks. They seemed scattered and meaningless. "The think war is a negotiation," explained. "They attack a species, show their power, demand tribute. The species surrenders because fighting is more expensive than paying. War is just business to them." "That is how most species conduct war," said. "Exactly." Smile grew colder. "That is why most species lose to they play by the same rules, we do not." She zoomed in on a particular system. A planet hung in the display, covered with structures. "This is the cultural archive world," she said. "It contains the history, art, and knowledge of every species they have conquered. They use it to control information. They decide what the galaxy knows and does not know." Felt a chill. "You are going to destroy it." No, shook her head. We are going to copy it, all of it, and then we are going to broadcast that data across the entire galaxy for free. Stared at her. That would destroy their information monopoly. Their economic power depends on controlling knowledge. Yes, you are not trying to beat them militarily. You are trying to change the nature of the war itself. Nodded slowly. Think this is about territory and resources. We are going to show them it is about something much bigger. We are not trying to make them surrender. We are trying to make them understand. Understand what? That they made a mistake, and that some mistakes cannot be undone. The operation, called Hollow Light, was executed perfectly. Human stealth ships penetrated defenses, centuries of archived data, and broadcast it across the galaxy. They did not fire a single shot. They did not kill a single. They simply took something they valued and gave it away to everyone else. The effect was devastating. Species that had paid for information suddenly had it for free. Trade agreements collapsed. Economic alliances crumbled. They had lost more in one day than they would have lost in 10 military defeats. But they did not accept this. They responded with fury. They attacked another human colony, a small mining world called Station. This time, the human fleet was waiting. Watched the battle from the command deck of the Eternal Dawn. He had seen space battles before. They were usually careful things, with ships maneuvering at safe distances, trading fire, retreating when damaged. Human ships did not retreat. They charged directly at the fleet. They closed to ranges that made their weapons more deadly, but also put themselves in terrible danger. They fought with an aggression that bordered on madness. A human destroyer took a direct hit. Its engines died. It was helpless, drifting in space. The move to destroy it. But then the destroyer began to move again, not from its engines, from manual control. The crew was steering the broken ship directly into a carrier. Watched in horror as the destroyer crashed into the carrier, destroying both ships. There were no escape pods. The human crew had not tried to survive. They had chosen to take their enemies with them. Around him, the human officers did not look surprised. They did not celebrate or mourn. They simply noted the loss and continued fighting. Sergeant Minu was standing nearby. He was a Marine, a ground soldier, but he watched the space battle with experienced eyes, moved to stand beside him. They did not try to escape, said. The crew of that destroyer, they knew they would die. Yes, Minu agreed. Why would they choose that? Minu turned to look at him. His face was hard but not cruel. Because their ship was going to die anyway. Because they could take a carrier with them. Because they killed our people, and every human they kill just makes the rest of us more dangerous. I do not understand, admitted. We do not fight for territory, Minu said. We do not fight for resources. We fight for each other, for the people we lost, for the people who are still alive. Every human who dies in this war becomes a reason for the rest of us to keep going. They think killing us weakens us. They are wrong. Every death makes our memory stronger. Every death adds another name to the list. The battle ended with a human victory. The fleet retreated, leaving their damaged ships behind. Human rescue teams moved through the wreckage, saving who they could. They even saved survivors, pulling them from broken ships and treating their wounds. Found this confusing. You save your enemies. Admiral Park overheard the question. We are not monsters. We fight because we must. We kill because we must, but we do not enjoy it. We do not take pleasure in suffering, even the suffering of our enemies. They would not save human survivors, pointed out. I know, the Admiral's voice was cold. That is the difference between us and them. That is why we will win. That night recorded his third report. Galactic military doctrine assumes all species value survival above victory, he said. This assumption is the basis of all strategic planning. If a battle becomes too costly, rational beings will retreat. If a war becomes too expensive, Rational governments will negotiate. He paused, thinking about the destroyer crew who had chosen to die. Humanity does not share this assumption. They have reintroduced something the galaxy forgot: the concept of unacceptable costs. They are willing to pay prices that other species will not. They are willing to sacrifice themselves not for victory but for meaning. Looked at the battle data on his screen. The humans had won, but they had paid dearly. Yet morale on the ship was higher than ever. They are winning battles, continued. They have killed more humans than humans have killed. By standard metrics, they are ahead. But they are losing something far more important. They are losing the narrative. They are discovering that humanity does not fight by their rules. They are learning that some enemies cannot be intimidated or exhausted or worn down. He thought about Captain's cold smile, about the archive data spreading across the galaxy, about this economic power crumbling while their military remained strong. The humans have a saying, death by 1,000 cuts. They are not trying to defeat thee in one great battle. They are cutting them, again and again, in places that did not know they could be hurt, and with every cut humanity grows stronger. Ended the recording and sat in silence. Outside his window, human ships were regrouping, preparing for the next battle. They did not look tired. They did not look defeated. They looked hungry. He wondered how much longer they could afford to win. 6 months had passed since the destruction of Nu, had watched humanity transform from a grieving species into something the galaxy had never seen before. And now he was about to witness something that would terrify him more than any battle. Human forces had pushed deep into space. Victory after victory had broken the military spirit. Their fleets were scattered. Their economy was in ruins. Their allies had abandoned them. The path to them was open. Everyone in the galaxy expected humanity to take revenge. They expected fire and destruction. They expected them to burn the way Nu had burned. Some species were already preparing to divide territory among themselves. The ancient empire was finished. Then Admiral Park gave an order that no one expected. Full stop. Was on the command deck when it happened. He watched the human fleet slow and halt at the edge of core systems. They were within striking distance of the. They had the power to end the species forever. They did not advance. The Galactic Council sent confused messages. Other species demanded explanations. Even some humans questioned the order, but Admiral Park stood firm. "We are done advancing," he said, "for now." Commander Im was the fleet's chief strategist. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars, sought her out, desperate to understand. "You could destroy them," he said. "Thee is defenseless. Your weapons could burn their cities. You could end their species. Why have you stopped?" Looked at him with something like pity. "Because we can." "I do not understand." "That is exactly why I am explaining." She sat down and gestured for to join her. "You have been watching us for 6 months. You have seen how we fight. You have seen our anger and our grief. You know what they did to us." "Yes." "Then you know that we have every reason to destroy them. We have the ability. We have the justification. By galactic law, we would be within our rights to glass their planets and salt their worlds so nothing ever grows there again." "Yes," said again, "so why do you not?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Because we are not the." She pulled up a display showing the. Billions of people lived there. Civilians, children, ordinary beings who had nothing to do with the attack on Nu. "We did not come here to destroy them," continued. "We came here to make sure they never do this again, to anyone. If we kill them all, we become what they are. We become the monsters. And then what was the point?" Struggled to process this. "But your people demand justice. They demand revenge for Nu." "Justice is not the same as revenge." Eyes were hard. "Justice means making things right. Revenge just means making others suffer. We want justice. We do not want to become a species that finds pleasure in suffering. They did not understand. They interpreted humanity's pause as weakness. They gathered their remaining forces and launched a desperate counteroffensive, throwing everything they had left at the human fleet. It failed completely. Human ships destroyed the attack with brutal efficiency. The path to the was even more open than before. Human soldiers could be landing in cities within days. The human fleet did not move. Days passed, then weeks. The galaxy watched in confusion. Human news networks broadcast the memorial names continuously, 2.3 million names scrolling endlessly across screens throughout human space. Humanity was not forgetting. They were not forgiving, but they were also not attacking. Finally, they sent a delegation to negotiate, was present when they arrived aboard the Eternal Dawn. The ambassador was a massive creature, covered in hard scales and armed with natural weapons. His species had evolved as predators. They did not understand mercy. They did not understand restraint. They only understood strength. "You have won," the ambassador said. "Name your price. We will pay tribute. We will surrender territory. What do you want?" Admiral Park stood before him, small and old and human. He should have looked weak. He did not. "We want justice," the admiral said. "Not tribute, not territory, justice." "Justice?" The ambassador seemed confused. "What does that mean?" "It means full reparations paid to the survivors of Nu and their families. Every credit will go to rebuilding lives that you destroyed." The ambassador nodded slowly. This was something he understood. Money was a price he could pay. "It means war crime tribunals for your leadership. The ones who ordered the attack on Nu will face trial. They will be judged by a galactic court." The ambassador's scales rippled with discomfort, but he did not refuse. "It means a permanent human military presence in your space. We will watch you. We will make sure you never do this again." And the ambassador asked, "And you will acknowledge what you did, publicly, to the entire galaxy. You will teach it in your schools. Your children will learn what happened on Nu. They will learn that their government murdered 2.3 million innocent people, and they will learn why that was wrong." The ambassador stared at Admiral Park. That is humiliation. You ask us to shame ourselves before the galaxy." "We ask you to remember," the admiral corrected. "The way we remember, we carry our dead with us. Now you will carry them too." They refused. They left the ship and returned to there. They expected humanity to negotiate, to offer easier terms, to compromise. Humanity did not negotiate. They did not attack either. They simply waited. The human fleet sat motionless at the edge of space, silent, patient, watching. The memorial names continued to scroll on screens throughout human territory. The galaxy watched and waited. Days became weeks. Weeks became a month. The economy continued to collapse. Their people grew afraid. Their government grew desperate. And still the human fleet waited. Finally, they accepted all terms. Watched the announcement. The ambassador, the same massive predator who had demanded to know humanity's price, stood before galactic cameras and read a statement. "The Dominion acknowledges responsibility for the destruction of the human colony Nu," he said. His voice was flat, defeated. "We acknowledge the murder of 2.3 million innocent civilians. We accept judgment and punishment for this crime. We will remember what we did. We will teach our children what we did, and we will never do it again." Around, humans watched in silence. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They simply nodded and returned to their work. That night recorded his fourth report. "I have studied 400 spacefaring species," he began. "I have witnessed conquests and surrenders and extinctions. I have never witnessed anything like what I saw today." He paused, struggling to find the right words. Humanity had the power to destroy them completely. They could have burned their worlds and erased their species from existence. No one would have blamed them. They had killed millions of their people. Revenge would have been justified. Thought about Admiral Park, standing small and calm before the massive ambassador. About Commander explaining why they would not become monsters. Instead, humanity chose mercy, not weakness, not surrender, mercy. They held annihilation in one hand and peace in the other, and they chose peace. Not because they were forced to, not because they had to, because it was right. He looked out his window at the human fleet, still holding position at the edge of space. This is why the galaxy should fear humanity, not because they can destroy. Many species can destroy. The galaxy should fear humanity because they can choose not to, because they have the strength to hold back, because they know exactly what they are capable of and they refuse to become it. Ended the recording. Outside, the stars burned cold and eternal. The war was over. They would survive. They would remember. They would teach their children about new. And humanity would go back to being the strange young species that the galaxy did not quite understand. But now the galaxy knew something new about them, something important, something terrifying. Humans were not dangerous because of what they would do. They were dangerous because of what they would not do. 5 years had passed since the end of the war, returned to human space to complete his final report. The Galactic Council wanted a conclusion. They wanted to understand what humanity was and what they might become. Was not sure he could give them an answer, but he would try. His shuttle landed on Nu. The planet had been dead once, burned and lifeless, covered with the ashes of 2.3 million people. Now it was alive again. Human settlers had returned. They had rebuilt cities where cities had stood before. They had planted forests where forests had burned. They had made something new from something destroyed. Captain met him at the landing pad. She was older now. Her hair had streaks of gray and lines marked her face, but her eyes were the same, calm, determined, carrying something heavy that she would never put down. She said, "Welcome back to Nu." Captain inclined his head. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." "I wanted to show you something," she said. She led him through the rebuilt city. It was smaller than the original, but it was growing. Children played in parks. Merchants sold food in markets. People went about their lives, laughing and arguing and living. They stopped at a wall. It stretched for kilometers, made of black stone polished until it shone like a mirror. Names were carved into the stone, millions of names, and at every section of the wall flowers had been placed, fresh flowers replaced every day. "This is the memorial," said quietly. "Every name of every person who died here, we will never forget them." Saw one name near the base of the wall. "'S brother." Flowers lay before his name, red and white and carefully arranged. "You still visit him," observed. "Every time I am on this world." His voice was steady. He would have been 28 now, maybe married, maybe with children. He wanted to be a doctor. He wanted to help people. She was quiet for a moment. "I became a soldier instead. I fought so that others could become doctors and teachers and parents. I carried him with me through the war. I carry him still." They walked through the city together, spoke with many people. He asked them all the same question: "Why did you not destroy the—" A teacher named Lee worked at a school near the memorial. Her classroom windows looked out at the wall of names. She answered his question with a sad smile. "My grandmother survived a war on Earth," she said. "A terrible war where many people died. She taught me something that I never forgot. She said that the measure of strength is not what you can destroy. It is what you can rebuild." She gestured at the window, at the children playing outside. "We could have destroyed we could have burned their worlds the way they burned ours. But then what? More dead children, more names on walls, more grief passed down through generations. My grandmother would not have wanted that, and neither do I." Spoke with a retired Marine named Han. He was an old man now, his body from battles fought years ago. He sat in a small apartment filled with pictures of his family. His granddaughter played with toys on the floor nearby. I wanted to kill every last one of them, admitted. During the war, I dreamed about burning their worlds, about making them suffer the way we suffered. Sometimes I still dream about it. But you did not, said. No, looked at his granddaughter. She was maybe 4 years old with round cheeks and curious eyes. Because of her, because of what I wanted her to become. If we had destroyed this, she would grow up knowing that her people were killers, that we answered murder with murder. I did not want that for her. I wanted her to know that we were better than them, that we could be hurt and still choose to be good. The little girl looked up at with no fear, only curiosity. She had never known war. She had grown up in a galaxy where humans were respected and even feared, but she did not know why. She will learn, said, following's gaze. When she is older, she will learn what happened here, what we did and what we chose not to do, and maybe she will understand why it matters. His final meeting was with Admiral Park. The old man had retired after the war. He lived in a small house on a hill overlooking the rebuilt city. From his garden, he could see the memorial wall stretching along the valley floor. He welcomed with tea, a human custom that had learned to appreciate. They sat in the garden as the sun set over New, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. So, Admiral Park said, "You have come to finish your report." Yes, held his cup carefully in his long fingers. The Galactic Council wants to understand humanity. They want to know what you are, why you fight the way you fight, why you choose the things you choose. And have you figured it out? Was silent for a long moment. I think so, but I would like to hear it from you. The Admiral smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of a man who had carried heavy weights for too long. We are not special, he said. We are not better than anyone else. We are just stubborn. We remember the worst things that happened to us, and we refuse to become the worst things that happened to us. That is all. That is not a small thing, said. No, it is not. The Admiral looked out at the memorial wall. Every name on that wall is a person who will never grow old, never fall in love, never see their children grow up. We carry them with us. And because we carry them, we cannot become monsters. We cannot let their deaths mean nothing. The sun sank below the horizon. Stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, they were rebuilding too. They were teaching their children about New. They were remembering just as humanity had demanded. The galaxy fears you, said quietly. I know. They fear you because you could have destroyed thee and chose not to. They fear you because you showed restraint when no one expected it. They fear you because they see in you a reflection of themselves, and they do not like what they see. Admiral Park nodded slowly. Good. Good. If they fear us, they will be careful around us. And if they are careful, perhaps there will be fewer wars, fewer burned worlds, fewer names on walls. He smiled again, and this time it was not tired, it was hopeful. Perhaps that is the best thing we can do for the galaxy, not conquer it, not rule it, just remind it of what it could be. Returned to his ship that night. He sat in his quarters and recorded his final report. I was sent to observe humanity's first war and explain why the galaxy should fear them, he began. I understand now that we were asking the wrong question. He thought about placing flowers at her brother's name, about teaching children to rebuild instead of destroy, about choosing his granddaughter's future over his own desire for revenge, about Admiral Park sitting in his garden, hoping that fear could become peace. We should not fear humanity because they are violent. Many species are violent. We should not fear them because they are persistent or clever or willing to sacrifice. Many species share those traits. Paused, choosing his words carefully. We should fear them because they are all of these things and they are aware of what they could become. They have looked into the darkness of their own nature and chosen, again and again, to step back from it. Not always, not perfectly, but enough. He thought about the memorial wall stretching across the valley, about the flowers placed there every day, about the names carved in stone that would never be forgotten. The galaxy fears humanity because we see in them a mirror. They are capable of everything we are capable of: the cruelty, the conquest, the destruction, but they carry something else, something we lost or maybe never had. Looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there humanity was spreading across the galaxy, building, growing, remembering. They carry the memory of what happens when beings like us stop choosing to be better. They carry their dead with them, and those dead remind them of who they do not want to become. He ended the recording with a recommendation. This concludes my observation. I am recommending that the collective propose humanity for full membership in the Galactic Council, not because they are powerful, though they are, not because they are useful, though they could be, but because they have something to teach us. Saved the file and prepared it for transmission. They have learned to carry unbearable weight and still walk forward. They have learned to hold destruction in their hands and choose creation instead. They have learned that the measure of a species is not what they can do, but what they refuse to do. He sent the report into the void, toward the distant halls of the Galactic Council. May they teach us what they have learned, and may we be brave enough to listen. Outside his window, Nu turned slowly beneath the stars. A world that had died and been reborn. A monument to grief transformed into hope. A reminder that even the worst tragedies can become something better, if you choose to let them. The stars burned on, eternal and indifferent, but somewhere among them humanity was watching, remembering, and choosing every day to be better than their pain. The galaxy had feared them for all the wrong reasons. Now, perhaps, it could learn to understand them instead.